How's it going, guys? I'm Paul Ryan, your host of the Not ATB Fantasy Show. If you're new to the show, thank you for joining us. And to our original listeners, welcome back. Unfortunately, Dave could not be here tonight, but I am not alone. Joining me tonight for our NFC East discussion is Mr. Jorge Edwards. Jorge, how are you?
Man, Paul, I am thrilled. We are, I know it sounds silly, but we're one day closer to the NFL season. I know we got the rest of July and the month of August to get to, but man, I am, training camp is coming around the corner before you know it. As everybody glued to their phones and the latest news source for their favorite team is around the corner. Like, oh, somebody tweaked an ankle. Oh my God, who tweaked the ankle? Or somebody made a big play in practice. I mean, I eat that stuff up. So, being here to talk about the NFC East, which is the division I grew up being a part of, rooting for. I'm honored to be here, and thank you for having me.
Hey, the pleasure's all mine, man. Like I said, John had nothing but nice things to say about you. And our last episode, John McGlynn, he nominated you to be a guest on here, man. So I'm excited for tonight's discussion.
Hell yeah, man. John's a great guy. John McGlynn, 75 on X, aka Twitter. Great follow, does great work. Great fan. He is a great fan of football and fantasy football, and that's what you'll love to see in this space. There's a lot of negativity in this space. He is not one of those people. He is all positivity. Great individual.
Absolutely, man. I really enjoyed our discussion last weekend. He was, we discussed the AFC East, and that's an interesting division. Like you, I'm a big fan of the NFC East, but for a different team, the Dallas Cowboys. So yeah, that just makes this tonight's discussion that much more interesting.
Well, it's funny being a Commanders fan. I grew up outside of Washington D.C. in Maryland, and so I grew up when Maryland was still in the ACC. And I told myself growing up, there's one type of person I would never end up with marrying as my spouse: somebody who is a Cowboys fan and a Duke fan. So my wife to this day, I love her to death. Not a Duke fan. But she is a Cowboys fan. And so we do have our 2 weekend of year rivalry where there is some trash talking going on. So it is a lot of fun, though.
Yeah, that would be a lot of fun to have your spouse rooting for the other team, right there next to you on the couch.
Exactly. Exactly. And it's one of those things where it's like you're sitting there and you're just like, okay, whatever is said today cannot be held against the other person. To which I am a little bit smarter than that and know better to make that mistake, but I let her get away with it because I love her. So
what's funny is, when I initially had met my wife, we were just getting to know each other. And one day she came over and I was watching the Cowboys game, and come to find out she was actually a fan of the New York Giants, not so much the team, but just Eli Manning of all people. And that's kind of how our bond grew over football.
Nice. I mean, he is the reason why they won 2 Super Bowls, so you can't hate that.
Yeah, interesting player for sure. Well, I mentioned we're discussing the NFC East tonight, and in terms of fantasy, there's really a lot to like about this division. Let's start off with the New York Giants. And Jorge, after an impressive 2022 season and head-scratchingly bad season in 2023, even with the upgrades to the offense in 2024, can we trust Daniel Jones in fantasy?
I mean, can you trust Daniel Jones in fantasy? I will. For example, Scott Fishbowl, for those who are unaware, is a tournament with thousands of people participating, and there are different scoring settings every single year that keeps things interesting. And one of those settings is you get an extra bonus for rushing attempts. So depending on my league scoring, if I'm getting bonuses for rushing attempts in terms of like the attempt, or am I getting bonuses for rushing for a quarterback? Yeah, I would roster Daniel Jones, because one of the things that people don't really remember too much about him, and I know it's because he was injured for most of last year, is the guy can move. The guy can run. He is not afraid to use his feet. The season that you were alluding to where they upset the Vikings in the playoffs, I mean, that was a really good year for him. Not so much being the pocket passing quarterback, but for fantasy purposes, he got out there, he got you those extra yards with his legs. And but if I'm in a traditional league where there's no bonuses for rushing attempts for a quarterback, I'm staying away. I think you could do better, especially in 1 quarterback leagues. You could definitely do better. In 2 quarterback leagues, Man, the rest of your roster better be pretty solid for you to be at a point where you'd consider taking Daniel Jones.
Yeah, I think he definitely has some appeal in super flex leagues. That's like your quarterback 2, even your quarterback 3. I do like the additions that they've made this offseason. And one of those additions was Devin Singletary. And see, look at Singletary. He's been an RB2 in 3 of his last 4 seasons and is currently ranked as the RB20. Yet he's never run for more than 900 yards in any season or had 300 receiving yards in a season and has 4 total receiving touchdowns in his career. Are you buying, selling, or holding Singletary in Dynasty?
In Dynasty, I am waiting for him to put up a 25-point game, and I'm selling. I'm selling. He is not the future of the New York Giants at the running back position. He is the best we could get after losing out on the Saquon Barkley bidding war, which apparently, according to the first episode of Hard Knocks, there wasn't a bidding war. They kind of just let him go. Which to the reasons that they were alluding to kind of makes sense. But that notwithstanding, for Dynasty, yeah, I'm waiting for the blow-up games to happen and then trading away for whatever assets I can get. For redraft, I'm excited. I'm excited because who else is there? I don't know. I don't care. You look back to last year with Houston. You look back to his time with the Bills. The guy can produce. And you mentioned it. He doesn't have a lot of tread on his tires in terms of yardage. Having to be attained there through rushing attempts. So given the volume, given the lack of depth in that backfield, and the fact that we still don't know what to expect from Daniel Jones, I think you're going to see the Giants rely on their defense and that running game quite a lot this season.
Absolutely. And, I mentioned the additions that the Giants have made to their offense this offseason, and one of those additions was Malik Nabers, rookie wide receiver. And I know everyone is excited to see what Malik Nabers will do for Daniel Jones and the Giants offense this year. But with the questions about Daniel Jones' ability, Nabers being a rookie and the Giants offense overall, Nabers is the wide receiver 26 off the board. Where are you looking to draft Nabers in redraft leagues?
To be perfectly honest with you, I'm not. There's another wide receiver for the Giants I'd rather hold off and draft based off of value, and that's Wan'Dale. God, why can't I remember his last name?
Robinson.
Thank you. God, I have no idea where that just came from. Wan'Dale Robinson. I knew it was whatever. It's been a long day. Wan'Dale Robinson. You look at every year he's played in the NFL, his yards per route run, his efficiency metrics, they've just been getting better and better. Not a lot of opportunity because poor quarterback play, lack of having your starting quarterback play. So literally play for the entire season, or for most of the season last year, a la Daniel Jones. But you look at, he is a former first-round pick. You look at what he did in college. You look at what he can do as shown in glimpses in the pros. I don't think the Giants' offensive line is going to be able to protect Daniel Jones long enough for him to take a few steps back and to really pepper Nabers with targets. I think they're going to have to get the ball out quickly, whether it's the screens to Singletary or the short over the middle passes, and that's right up Wan'Dale Robinson's alley.
Yeah, and you look at the Giants wide receiver room, it's Malik Nabers who's going to be the alpha. Then you've got Wan'Dale who's going to be the slot guy over the middle guy. And then you've got Darius Slayton and Jalen Hyatt, who both being field stretchers. We talked about Devin Singletary, the addition there at running back. But there's a bit of a debate on who the Giants RB2 is between Tyrone Tracy and Eric Gray. And then, I mentioned the wide receivers just now with Robinson, Darius Slayton, and Jalen Hyatt. How are you approaching the Giants' secondary pieces in best ball leagues?
Oh, that's a great question. So let's talk about the wide receiver situation with, I like Jalen Hyatt. They drafted him last year, but man, it is hard for me to quit Darius Slayton. I mean, say what you will about him. The guy has his stretches for best ball. He helps win you some weeks. Like, you know what I mean? Like, he doesn't get a lot of target volume, but he does get the deep passes. He does get the big plays is what you want. And while I like Jalen Hyatt, and the potential, I'd rather bank on what I've seen versus potential in a given situation. So give me Darius Slayton in this situation. As far as the backups there, last year, Eric Gray. Oh, he's the guy you want. Saquon can't stay healthy. Let's get Eric Gray. He's going to be a great running back, and he's so great that they drafted Tyrone Tracy this year, who's now. He is going to be the guy you want. I'm staying. Again, for Dynasty, give me Give me Tyrone Tracy, because if it was Eric Gray, Tyrone Tracy would not be a New York Giant. So give me the guy that they have more faith in this year than the guy they had faith in a year ago and decided they had to upgrade at the position.
Yeah, I was taking a lot of Darius Slayton early in the offseason, and now I've kind of been targeting Jalen Hine a little bit more in best ball just because of the ADP discount. And then I was, same thing for Eric Gray. I was taking him more early in the offseason, but now seems to be Tyrone Tracy is who I'm going after just to have a little bit more balance.
Oh, yeah, definitely. You got to with anything, whether it's dynasty, redraft, best ball, finding value, going to the grocery store, finding value and discounts, wherever you can get them is the way to go to it. It's the way to play.
We need to come up with some fantasy coupons, Jorge, so get guys
awesome.
at an ADP discount.
That's awesome. I love that. We got to do that. That'd be fantastic.
So let's move on to your Commanders here. And, man, I think this guy's really got people excited in Jayden Daniels. And you look at him and his skill set and ability, he could have the best fantasy season of all the quarterbacks in this division, but he is still a rookie playing in a tough division. Are you drafting Daniels ahead of the more proven quarterbacks in the NFC East, like a Dak and Jalen Hurts in redraft leagues?
No. Dak Prescott had statistically one of his best seasons, if not his best season last year. I don't see that changing this year. And the old narrative, contract year players always put up their best numbers. Well, even if he doesn't put up what he did in 2023, it's a little bit less than that. I still think he's going to be one of the top fantasy quarterbacks you can get. And Jalen Hurts, this guy can do it all. Say what you will about the Eagles down the stretch from a real football point of view, in terms of fantasy football view, Jalen Hurts and his rushing upside, even though Saquon Barkley is there now, I still think you can count on. But Jayden Daniels is somebody that I will be targeting in redraft, especially because given how many skill players there are now, where they're very draftable as your wide receivers 2 and 3. I'll probably be punting the quarterback position and taking a gamble on a Jayden Daniels as my first quarterback, and then as a backup, Jared Goff. I'll probably take a 2 quarterback approach at that point. But I am definitely swinging for the fences, not because I'm a Commanders fan, just because you have that rushing upside. You have what's really impressive to me is his deep ball accuracy. You look at what he did at LSU last year, just fantastic placement with the ball. Doesn't make a lot of mistakes. All the reports you hear out of mini camps and OTAs have all been positive. So there's not smoke. There's not a lot of red flags to go here. The one thing or 2 things that you hear about in terms of the knock on Jayden Daniels at LSU is the guy needs to learn how to slide. The guy takes the hits bad. And he only did this for 1 year. He didn't do this at Arizona State. I'm like, okay, there have been plenty of cases where you've had, quarterbacks go off their 1 year, and then, turn it on. So I don't like to hear that narrative. And for real, and again, we're talking fantasy. We're not talking real football. Like for Blake Bortles, horrible NFL quarterback, fantastic fantasy football quarterback, especially the year that he took him to the AFC Championship. You didn't care. He got the garbage time fantasy points. He got you the 20 a game that you wanted. For fantasy, if I can stomach having Blake Bortles on my fantasy team and him averaging 20 points a game, I can take the risk on Jayden Daniels as a rookie. And then, of course, the taking the hits thing. Look, I'm a Commanders fan. I was there during the RG3 years where he was taking hits. There is some PTSD still there from the 2012 season of Haloi Nada hitting RG3 in the leg and that being kind of the end of it. So I am concerned with that. But again, where you're getting him in fantasy drafts, the value, although I think his ADP is currently like quarterback 13 or creeping up there into the mid QB2 range. If I'm drafting now, I'm grabbing him. If he for some reason falls into the QB, late QB1 range, which I don't see that happening unless you're listening to practice reports and like his value is being overflated, in which case I'm probably passing. See what I did there? Passing on Jayden Daniels. I'll be drafting him this year.
Yeah, I like the idea there of if you decide to wait on quarterback, maybe you draft Daniels to be your QB1, and then you pair him with a safer bet for bye weeks to just if he's going through those early season struggles, and Daniels there.
Yeah, 100%.
So, after the addition of Daniels, the Commanders' skill players' ADPs have risen during the offseason. Terry McLaurin's ADP is wide receiver 32, and he has the best and most consistent receiver on the Commanders, while Jahan Dotson's ADP is wide receiver 62. He had a promising rookie season, yet suffered from a sophomore slump in 2023. Of the two, who do you prefer in Dynasty?
Now that Jayden Daniels is the quarterback, I'll pay up for Terry McLaurin. I know we were just talking about fantasy coupons. Terry McLaurin, he's played with 11 garbage quarterbacks over the course of his career, and I want to say every year he's had, outside of his rookie year, 1,000 yards receiving or damn near close to it. So if he can do that with 11 scrub quarterbacks, I am ecstatic to see what he could do with Jayden Daniels, especially going back to what I was saying earlier about Jayden Daniels and his deep ball accuracy. This is what Terry McLaurin needs. He needs a guy who's on target, who's on point, who can throw the ball wherever he needs to perfectly. I'm paying up for Terry McLaurin.
To think that McLaurin's only been in the league for 5 years and he's had 11 different quarterbacks is crazy.
It is, right? I mean, it's who knew from his first touchdown catch from Case Keenum in Week 1 versus Philadelphia to where he is now. I mean, and folks have to remember last year people will be like, oh, Terry McLaurin wasn't as consistent as he had been in previous years. Let's forget he had turf toe. He suffered turf toe towards the end of August, the end of training camp. And, for those who pay attention to that kind of thing, turf toe doesn't just go away. It's not like, we'll put some ice on it, put some dirt on it, in 2 weeks or 3 weeks, it's going to be okay. That's going to linger. That's going to linger over the course of the season. It doesn't help that you had Eric Bieniemy as your play caller who didn't know how to scheme open, McLaurin or Jahan Dotson properly to the point where Sam Howell can deliver, all of his yards that he put up last year, passing the ball consistently. So a lot of promise last year, but I think the turf toe injury had something to do with his game. I think this year going in healthy is going to work wonders.
Yeah, crazy to think with all the pass attempts that Howell had last year, not a single Commanders receiver had 1,000 receiving yards.
Yeah, it's a brand new year. It's a brand new season there, Paul. What can I say, man?
It's been an exciting offseason for the Commanders, and they made a bit of an odd move when they signed Austin Eckler in the offseason. When you have Brian Robinson, who's shown he can handle a workhorse role, and Eckler's specialty is receiving the ball, but he admittedly doesn't want a lot of touches and carries. But you look at their complementary skill sets, would you consider drafting both of these running backs on the same team in a best ball league?
I am trying to get Brian Robinson everywhere I can this year for fantasy. Eckler, no, I'll pass on Eckler wherever he's going in terms of ADP for drafts. I think I can do better. To be honest with you, and I don't want to spoil things for a little bit later, but you being a Cowboys fan, you'll appreciate this. I would rather take a chance on Ezekiel Elliott than I would Austin Eckler this season for fantasy. And I can get to that, rationale a little bit later when we talk about the Cowboys. So, I'm trying to get Brian Robinson. Give me all the Brian Robinson this year.
Yeah, he's really steamed up draft boards, and rightfully so. I think he's in for a big year. Another player that people I've seen are excited about in this Commanders offense is Ben Sinnott, the rookie tight end, and he's been a popular tight end target in best ball and dynasty leagues. But people tend to overlook the Commanders' addition of Zach Ertz in free agency, and he has familiarity with Kingsbury's offense, knowing that tight ends don't always produce early in their careers. Is Zach Ertz the one that maybe we should be drafting in 2024?
For redraft, I'd rather wait until later in my draft. And yes, you could wait later in your draft to draft Zach Ertz. I would take Zach Ertz just because of that familiarity in Kingsbury's offenses. You saw them utilize the tight end a lot. I think Sinnott, though, is the guy you go for. He is the guy you go for in Dynasty. One of our writers here at Fantasy and Frames, Chris Battistel, he did a rookie preview, which you can check out on our website, where he was talking about the pros and cons with Ben Sinnott. And ultimately, it comes down to reps. It comes down to opportunity. And when given that, the Senator, as he's called now, is going to ball out for this Commanders passing game. But for now, I think you take the discount and redraft on Zach Ertz. And again, you're waiting till like, you know how people are like, you wait till defensive kicker till the last 2 picks of your draft. Well, the 3rd pick is Zach Ertz, and I guarantee you'll probably be there in your drafts.
That could be a nice little waiver wire add in Scott Fishbowl, for people who might not have picked him up or drafted him.
True. That's very true. Yep.
Well, let's move on to the Philadelphia Eagles. And the Eagles made possibly the biggest splash signing in free agency when they signed Saquon Barkley. Injury concerns aside, we know the upside Saquon offers, but people are concerned about his fit with Jalen Hurts, who has 20 rushing TDs over the last 2 seasons. What are your thoughts on this situation and how Saquon fits in the Philly offense next to Hurts?
Do you remember the beginning to last season when DeAndre Swift was like carving up opposing defenses because he had that Philadelphia Eagles offensive line to run behind? Okay. Now you put Saquon Barkley back there. And unlike DeAndre Swift, who kind of has been known to, start things off strong and then fade as the season progresses, Saquon Barkley is going to do amazing things behind the line of scrimmage as soon as he's able to if he remains healthy, which is a concern. He has had some injury history in the past. Am I concerned for Jalen Hurts? No, he's going to get his rushing upside. You may not see a lot of tush pushes anymore because Barkley can get those yards on his own, or especially behind this offensive line. But don't get it twisted. Like, Jalen Hurts is going to get his rushing yards. He's going to get his touchdown. They're going to scheme him open. So I'm not concerned at all. There may be, now I will say there might be a dip in his points per game average. But what am I saying? Like, let's say the guy was averaging 24 points per game. He might get you 22 or 21. Am I really complaining about it at that point? You know what I mean? You're getting QB1 production either way. So no, I'm not concerned about that, to be honest with you.
Yeah, that Philly offense is pretty scary when you think about Hurts, Saquon Barkley, A.J. Brown, Devonta Smith, and then even Dallas Goedert, who he's had his own issues with injuries. But that's a pretty scary offense if Kellen Moore can figure out how to get those guys open and work together.
Absolutely. That's and you hit the nail right on the head. Kellen Moore, I mean, you take away the past couple seasons where Mike McCarthy was tired of him in Dallas, and then he goes to the Chargers, and you think it's going to be a match made in heaven, and then that goes south, and then it's like, people forget, for the seasons he was in Dallas, he was an innovator. People were cheering for him over Jason Garrett any day of the week, and he had success with that offense with Dak and Zeke and Amari, and then when CeeDee came on, CeeDee. So I think last year he got a mulligan, to use a golf term, in Los Angeles with the Chargers, and I think this year you're going to see his style of play calling really take hold of Philadelphia and them do some amazing things.
Absolutely. Well, asking a similar question from the flip side, a big portion of Hurts' fantasy points have come from his rushing stats. Does the addition of Barkley limit or increase Hurts' upside?
For rushing stats? Yeah. I mean, you don't want your franchise to keep putting himself in harm's way rushing the ball. But one of the things I've noticed about Jalen Hurts over the past 2 years watching him is, like, when he does scramble, he doesn't go for like 5 yards. He gets you those chunk plays. So I think you're going to get the chunk plays. But yeah, having Saquon Barkley there to take some pressure off, needing to rush the ball, man, it depends on scenario. Like, if you need a 4th down, like, I'm trusting Jalen Hurts to get me that 4th down more than Saquon. And I know that sounds crazy, but like, I want the best player on the field to have the ball in his hands to make plays. And Jalen Hurts is that guy. And if you don't think Jalen Hurts doesn't still have the confidence to say, give me the ball, I'm going to go get this 1st down and we're going to go win this game. Like, I don't know what to tell you. The guy is just that good and he's that confident. Now, when we're talking, goal line situations or easy, 3rd down conversions or 2nd down conversions, yeah, Saquon's going to get his. I still am a believer that when push comes to shove and when you need that yard, trust in Hurts.
Yeah, and the beauty of that also is that even as good as Jalen Hurts has been with the tush push of picking up those critical fourth downs, Philadelphia might not have to be so reliant on that with the addition of Saquon Barkley.
Sure. I mean, they may not even find themselves in that situation because they're up ahead that good or that much in football games. 100%. Yep.
Absolutely. I mentioned Devonta Smith, and he seems to be everyone's favorite wide receiver too in fantasy. You look at where he's being drafted, he's in the same range as guys like Zay Flowers, Nico Collins, a DJ Moore, and a Michael Pittman Jr. In redraft leagues, who do you like most in that group of receivers there?
Oh, it's Devonta Smith. People like to call him a wide receiver too. I'll still call him the 1B to Brown's 1A. I just feel AJ Brown's 1A. The guy just delivers, and I hate the narrative. Oh, he's too skinny, or oh, AJ Brown's there, he's going to siphon targets. The guy still gets his targets. He gets the deep passes. He has a good reception percentage. You look at any other metric you want to. The guy can play, and he makes plays for fantasy. So, if I go running back heavy in my draft and Devonta Smith is my wide receiver 1, I'm perfectly fine with that. Like, give me that. And as far as the other wide receivers you mentioned, I am a fan of Zay Flowers. I really like his upside, and I like having another year in Todd Monken's system in Baltimore for him to really take that next step forward. But until I see it, it's Devonta Smith for the Eagles for me.
Very fair. I know of that group, and just for me, I do still like kind of Nico Collins, even with the addition of Stephon Diggs there, but Zay Flowers might be the most appealed just because of potential target share.
100%. And don't get me wrong, I love Nico too. I acquired him in all my dynasty leagues, and in some redraft leagues, I'm trying to go after him. It's Scott Fishbowl. He was my wide receiver 1. I got him there. Yeah, I mean, you like it. You don't like the situation, right? But you like the contract you got, after the Stephon Diggs acquisition. So, if I'm a Texans fan for fantasy, I'm more excited to have CJ Stroud as my fantasy option than any 3 of those wide receivers. But don't get me wrong, Nico is going to get his.
Absolutely, absolutely. Another player that's intriguing in this Eagles offense is Dallas Goedert, who he's had 3 consecutive seasons as a top 15 fantasy tight end, but he only has 1 top 10 season in his 6-year career. Do you trust Goddard to be your fantasy team's every week starter, or is he more of a matchup based play?
No, to answer both of those questions. Yeah.
Okay.
So just peek behind the curtain. You had some questions on your show sheet as far as like players you're not happy with. He is numero uno on that list. So I do not trust him to be my weekly starter. And I don't trust him for fantasy purposes either.
Very fair. Yeah, he's a weird one, man, because I mentioned the production that he's had. He looks to be consistent, but he's dealt with injuries, and then you kind of take a deeper dive into his weekly numbers, and they're really not that great.
Right. I mean, he has his streaky game or 2 or 3 per season, but then again, and the thing I don't like people saying is like, well, the tight end position is such a bad position anyhow. You're grateful for whatever you can get. He got you 6.7 points. Well, that was the tight end 8. I'm like, I don't care. That's only 6.7 points. I'd rather pay up for tight end than trying to find value at the tight end spot, unless it's a really good situation where the tight end could be valued like Zach Ertz, like we were just talking about a few minutes ago. I'm off the Dallas Goedert bandwagon.
Very fair. Let's move on to my Dallas Cowboys here, the best team in this division, and we're sticking with the tight end. After finishing the season as the tight end in 2023, people still don't believe in Jake Ferguson's talent. Are you buying, selling, or holding Jake Ferguson in dynasty leagues?
Buying, starting. He's the one I'm targeting in fantasy football drafts, if I'm being completely honest, and I don't get Kelsey or Laporta or Andrews. I would rather, if Kittle and Ferguson are on the board, I'd rather wait and have somebody take Kittle on name brand alone and get Ferguson, because you look at the double-digit fantasy points per game, point games that he had last season, just fantastic. They are incorporating him into this passing game. who's the receiver, not just wide receiver, but receiver 3 for this Dallas Cowboys, I think it's Ferguson. I think he's going to continue to show you that they really have a lot of faith in him. Yeah, man, I just love his production. I love his target share. I love everything about what he does. And like I said, he's the one who I'm really targeting in my fantasy drafts for redraft coming up, as well as for Dynasty.
Yeah, and I don't think people really understand the trust that he has developed with Dak Prescott, which is a huge thing.
No, 100%. I mean, you look at what happened with Dak Prescott and Dalton Schultz. Now, some may say, is that a product of Kellen Moore in his play calling, or is that just a product of them having a connection? I think it's more of the latter, and I think you're seeing that because of what you saw in performances with Ferguson this past season. I think he is. I think the Dak connection with him is very strong.
Absolutely. Everyone thought Dallas would draft a running back this year, but instead they brought back Ezekiel Elliott to pair with Rico Dowdle and Deuce Vaughn. Zeke is the most proven but older. Rico is a bit of an unknown, and Deuce Vaughn is small but has the most upside. Does this backfield offer any appeal outside of a best ball league for you?
No, I actually like I think I mentioned it a little bit earlier. If I'm going 0 RB as my strategy, give me Ezekiel Elliott. He may not be the breakaway 50-yard touchdown scorer like he was when he was a rookie. He may not have that explosiveness anymore. But what he's really good at is short yardage situations and catching the ball. And if you need proof on that, look back at New England last year, how badly the Patriots were. I mean, the Patriots were so bad, the greatest coach to NFL history was like, deuces, I'm out. But Ezekiel Elliott was that bright, shining spot on that offense where he got you those receptions. And in PPR leagues, he probably helped you in a fantasy championship if you were lucky enough to get him off your waiver wire and capitalize on his upside there. And now you look at what's going on in Dallas, like Rico Dowdle, okay. I mean, he is technically, the RB2 on that team. Deuce Vaughn had a great story. I cried when they showed the video of his dad calling him on draft day and saying, "We're picking you." That was fantastic. Great story. But I think you're going to see Zeke thrown into that RB1 situation. And let's not get it twisted. This Cowboys offense is predicated on passing the ball. They're not going to have to rely on Zeke because you look at the running back situation for most running backs on teams, it's to alleviate pressure off the quarterback. It's to give some kind of balance. Well, Dallas has showed you, screw your balance. We're just going to pass all over you, and you're just going to sit there and take it. And then we're going to finish you off with Ezekiel Elliott at the end to ice the game. And I think that's their philosophy, and I think that's what you're going to see from Dallas, or at least what they're going to attempt to do this year.
Yeah, you look at Zeke, and I thought he was much better than I thought he would be last year in New England. And this year I was kind of not as excited as a Cowboys fan would be with bringing him back. But now that time has passed, I think about what he can do on third down and in the red zone. He's a very appealing fantasy play.
Oh, 100%. And like I said, you're getting him at a discount. You can go wide receiver heavy in your leagues. And people are gonna be like, "Oh, Zeke, he's washed. He's just not like he may be washed from what you were expecting when he was a first round draft pick, but there's still plenty of value there, especially in PPR leagues."
Yes, sir. Another interesting discussion has been the battle for the wide receiver 3 position for the Cowboys. And when you look at Dallas's offense in the pecking order, is any wide receiver worth drafting outside of CeeDee Lamb and Brandon Cooks in redraft leagues?
No. And let me preface this. I may be a Commanders fan, but the poison that my wife has been spewing in terms of her Cowboys fandom over the years has entered my brain. And there was a wide receiver y'all had up until this coming year he had one good season, and I was all aboard, no matter how badly he produced afterwards, and that was Michael Gallup. And Michael Gallup is not there. The third receiving option is Ferguson. If Gallup's not there, I'm not trusting any other wide receiver there for the Dallas Cowboys.
Yeah, it's hard to outside of best ball to trust any of those guys when you think about Lamb, Cooks, and then Jake Ferguson, and then whichever running back. Maybe it's Zeke, maybe it's Dowdle, maybe it's Deuce Vaughn. There's not really a lot more to eat from, if you will.
No, sure. I see what you did there. Nice.
Yeah, we're gonna do a little keep, trade, cut, and then with a twist, we're gonna do a add buy to this, and we're gonna do this quarterback edition. It's Dak Prescott QB 15, Jalen Hurts QB 4, Jayden Daniels QB 12, and Daniel Jones QB 31. Of those 4 quarterbacks, Jorge, keep, trade, cut, and buy.
Keeping. I am keeping Jalen Hurts. I am buying Jayden Daniels, and I'm cutting Dak Prescott just because I don't know where Dak is playing next year. I like Dak this year for redraft.
Yeah.
Where's he going next year? Is Dallas going to re-sign him to $300 million plus? I don't know. You still got CeeDee hanging over your shoulder. You still got a lot of question marks. So I'll pay up for Hurts just because the guy has not been out of the top 3 in fantasy points per game scoring, I want to say, since the year before their Super Bowl. So give me that.
Very fair. I like that. Okay, Jorge, which player from this division do you want on all of your fantasy teams, regardless of format?
CeeDee. It's CeeDee Lamb. You look at last year finishing as the number 1 wide receiver in non-PPR, 15.8 points per game. And that's in the non-PPR. That's not even counting receptions. You go to half point, again, wide receiver 1, 19.7, full point, 23.7. You look at his monster targets, 184 last year. He's not going to get 184 this year. I'm sorry, that's an anomaly. You go back to 2022, 156 though, right? 21, 120, averaging 153 a game. Even if he's getting you 153 a game, he's still in the top 5. Nothing has changed from last year to this year. Literally, they didn't change the running back. They didn't change anything. The play calling is still the same. The philosophy is going to be the same. CeeDee's just going to produce, and he's the most safe, top 10 fantasy pick I think you can get at any position for people this year in their fantasy drafts.
Absolutely. I love that answer. For me, with Superflex being the new norm in fantasy these days and elite quarterbacks being the cheat code in 1 QB leagues, I got to go with my guy, Dak Prescott, currently being the 15th quarterback taken off the board. I'll take that discount all day.
Oh, I mean, if that's, yes. In Superflex league, it's funny that you mentioned in Superflex, as your second quarterback, I would be fine in a Superflex league for this year as my QB1. Don't get me wrong. I know I just said cut Dak Prescott for the long term, but for the short term, give me Dak Prescott. It's no brainer. I don't care that he doesn't show up in the playoffs. My fantasy season is done at the playoffs. You know what I mean? I already have my title. Knock on wood. Hopefully that's the case. I definitely see that. I would be happy as my QB1. If I was lucky to have him as my QB2, man, my team is pretty set.
I have a Superflex dynasty team with Jalen Hurts and Dak Prescott as my quarterbacks.
You're just showing off. That's awesome. That's awesome.
Yeah. So, who's your favorite sleeper in this division?
It's Brian Robinson. And we look at some of the efficiency metrics he had last year. He was a running back 20 and missed tackles force, and again, this is courtesy of PFF. The RB 27 yards after contact per attempt, which I believe he can outperform this year. He had a total in terms of rushing and receiving yards over 1,000, averaged in full PPR 13.2 a game. Here's why I really like him. You take away the numbers, you take away the stats. I look at the coaching. Okay, and I want to tell you, I am excited for Brian Robinson because Anthony Lynn, and you're going to hear his name, I guarantee you, when you're watching Commanders games this season, and that is Anthony Lynn was the running backs coach for the Buffalo Bills back when they had LaShawn McCoy. And last I heard, LaShawn McCoy did pretty well in Buffalo. And then Anthony Lynn went to the Los Angeles Chargers, where he had Melvin Gordon and eventually had Austin Eckler. Then they moved to San Diego, became the Los Angeles, became the Los Angeles Chargers. He knows how to coach running backs. He knows how to get them playing at their best. And I believe him with Kingsbury having that explosive offense with Anthony Lynn's coaching, I think you're going to see a tremendous jump with Brian Robinson. Who does he have to compete with in terms of rushing attempt? Rushing attempt, it's Chris Rodriguez. Don't get me wrong. Chris Rodriguez had his moments last year, but he's not Brian Robinson. Eckler is going to take away some of the target share, but even then, he was one of the more efficient running backs. You look at, we talk about last year with Brian Robinson in the receiving game, and everybody assumes, Antonio Gibson was just heads and shoulders above Brian Robinson as a receiver. No, Brian Robinson held his own in terms of efficiency metrics, receiving the ball. He was fourth in yards per route run amongst all running backs in the NFL last year. So the guy is efficient. The guy can get it done. Like I said, Eckler, I'm not really high on. I think this is the time for Brian Robinson to really show out and show what he can do.
I like that answer. A lot. I don't know why people are sleeping on this player, especially after what he did in the last half of the season. But Brandon Cooks is the perfect flex player, in my opinion. He has wide receiver weekly upside and an elite offense, and he's being drafted in the 200s, yet he was the wide receiver 24 from week 6 through 18 in 2023.
You know that gif of Ezekiel Elliott with the bowl of cereal where he's just doing the feed me thing? Give me all the Brandon Cooks, man. You want to leave him on the draft board in the waiver wire, or you want to leave him late in drafts? He's not getting past me. So I want him. I want the production. The reason why Brandon Cooks doesn't get a lot of respect out there is because there's say what you want. The fact that this guy gets traded around every couple of years to different teams, I mean, that has produced a stigma. For whatever reason, right or wrong, that has produced a stigma. And I think Dallas fans and the NFL in general got spoiled of the Amari Cooper, CeeDee Lamb 1-2 combination. It's like, okay, well, you don't have Amari Cooper anymore. You have to trust in Brandon Cooks, who they brought in as a replacement. So, you like the connection you see there. It's another year in the same system. And like you said, you saw him down the stretch of last year. This is a Dallas team that's going to be airing it out. I'm all about I 100% co-sign on what you just said about Brandon Cooks.
All right, with every sleeper and every breakout player, there's always a bust, Jorge. Which player do you think will bust in this division?
So it's he finished as a tight end 14 last year. He's going in PPR as the ADP wise tight end 13. So I guess from that perspective, he's not really a bust. He's kind of what you're getting. But in terms of what you might blindly think, well, this team is just really good, they're going to get everybody to be fantasy relevant. It's Dallas Goedert, and I was kind of talking about him a little bit earlier. He was the tight end, 18 in yards per route run. He had a dismal 42% contested catch rate. And when I think about my tight ends, I want my tight end to out-muscle guys getting passes. When he's only doing that 42% of the time, that's not great. He only had an average when targeted. He only gave the quarterback an average passer rating when he was targeted, which is kind of like I want a short-handed tight end who makes my quarterback look good. Well, he wasn't doing that for Jalen Hurts, which is why Jalen Hurts was throwing it to everybody but Dallas Goedert for the most part, or at least consistently last year. And now you have to compete with targets, AJ, Devontae, Saquon out of the backfield, plus you have the scrambling upside with Jalen Hurts. I feel like, again, you're in a situation for Philadelphia where it's just he's that 1 or 2 game a year producer, and then what are you getting? Again, I would rather pass on Goddard and get Ertz later, for example.
Very fair, yeah. I like that. This is strictly based off of ADP for me being drafted as the RB4. I don't think Saquon Barkley will finish inside the top 10, let alone the top 5. I don't like drafting players at their ceilings.
No, that's very fair, and I would rather take for me, I've become more risk adverse in my first round pick. I'd rather go wide receiver. I'd rather get somebody like a CD, probably who is falling to me at that point, or a Jamar Chase or a Justin Jefferson, somebody who's a little bit more proven, a little less injury adverse over the course of his career. I think Saquon is a great 1-2 turn pick for second round turn pick. I would not take him in the top 5 or top 4, like you were just saying.
Yeah. Glad we could agree on that. I felt a little crazy writing it down, but
no.
I'm glad you see that.
I mean, and we were talking about this earlier. Like, we were talking about it from the other perspective of like, how is Saquon going to impact Hurts? Well, how is Hurts going to impact Saquon in that regard?
Mm-hmm.
So I think you are having, and then they drafted Will Shipley, I believe, out of Clemson, who, is he going to eat into Saquon's, rushing attempts, target share? Rushing attempts, no, but they may want to preserve Saquon, and so you may see Will Shipley do a little something that might impact the target share there. I mean, Kellen Moore, like I said, he has a lot of options there receiving the ball. So, no, I'm right there with you. Not a top 4 pick.
Okay, who's your favorite division to draft in this division, or excuse me, rookie to draft?
Jayden Daniels,
NFC East. Yeah,
and that's not. You can call it me being biased. Sure, I'm biased. The rushing upside for the quarterback, if I can get him as my quarterback too, like, I am ecstatic. Like, if people want to tell me, oh man, he's so frail, or he could be injured, he could play one and done. It could be an RG3 season all over again, and I could be like, or that could not happen. And he balls out for the course of his career. It is a fantastic quarterback for the Washington Commanders. Anybody can get hurt on any given day, So I don't want to hear that narrative that he's, somebody who can get injured quickly. I mean, anybody can get injured quickly. You never know when it can happen. So I'd rather not think about that. Take the players for who they are, where they're at, over the course of their career in terms of their health and situation. And for fantasy, what can they do for me? And Jayden Daniels can give me a lot of rushing yards. So I'm happy with that.
Absolutely. And the last thing you need to try to do is try to predict injury. So don't do that to yourself.
Right. Absolutely. 100%.
My favorite rookie to draft in this division is, it's Malik Nabers. Anytime you can get that high upside elite wide receiver, the more often than not, the cheapest they'll ever be is in the rookie draft. So when you can grab that guy, you do it immediately.
And not to mention, he's probably going to go cheap. Like Marvin Harrison is the rookie wide receiver who people are saying is a top 12 pick, or at least a high second round pick. And people are forgetting about Nabers just because he's with the Giants and Daniel Jones. And it's like, no, dude. Like, if I had to pick between taking Harrison or Nabers, I would rather pass on Harrison and get somebody who's proven as a top first and second round pick, and get the discount on Nabers later on, just because, like you just said, he is walking into the Giants camp as the best wide receiver they have on their roster, the alpha there, and somebody that Daniel Jones better be best friends. They better be doing what Matt Stafford and Cooper Kupp did, and they have breakfast with each other every day, just absorb everything, young man, because you are about to be in the New York spotlight. And yeah. So I think you're spot on with that. That's a great pick there.
All right, here we are with the Fantasy Edge, and Jorge, I want you to share an account, a site, a podcast, or other resource you like and use that you feel gives you an edge in fantasy.
So, and I just happen to know him very well, and so and the work he does, and that's Michael Bauer at Rewind, CEO for the Dynasty Rewind. They put out fantastic work. Like, if you type in Dynasty on YouTube, like, I guarantee you one of his videos, his videos or his team's videos. Shout out to Bob Van, who does a lot of the post-production there. They're just fantastic. They're informative. They get to the point. They tell you what you need to know. They throw in some humor. They throw in some personality. Great people to watch, to interact with, and get to know. But it all starts at the top, and he is a great leader for that brand, and he represents that brand well. So Michael Bauer at Rewind, CEO.
Okay, I'll definitely remember that. I'll put that in the sheet. Here we are with Fantasy Shout Out. Just share an account you think would be a good guest for this show. So
I'm biased because I love the Fantasy and Frames family so much. We there's a lot of us here. Four-eyed framers here. That's a horrible nickname. I got to find a better one for our team. The one person that really jumps out to me, who's been making since he's come on board impressive strides, doing his research. Just who I quite frankly think is not getting enough attention in this fantasy space as a whole is Drew Scott at Drew3MR. I mean, this guy, you tell him to show up to a show, he has stats memorized from 2020 to now. He can talk to you about any player, any situation. And you know what? When you have to debate him on something, 9 times out of 10, you're going to walk away losing that debate because he will change your mind and he will come prepared. And most importantly, he is a down-to-earth guy, really cool to get along with. And like I said, deserves more recognition in this fantasy space.
Absolutely. I got him marked down. Looking forward to chatting with him. Give us a bold call NFC East edition.
I'm going to say, I'm going to say Devin Singletary will be a late QB or RB2 to finish the season in points per game. I really think the opportunity is there, and I think he's going to take advantage of it.
Yeah, I mean, I think people are kind of sleeping on this Giants offense as a whole just because of, Daniel Jones' bad season and just how the Giants looked last year. But that's a stinky team to target in fantasy.
No, it is. I mean, it's really a crapshoot. You really have no idea what you're going with. But you look at the production that Singletary had down the stretch last year. Not a lot of wear and tear. And, if Daniel Jones ends up not being the guy that the Giants thought he was, they're going to rely a lot on this running game. And I think Devin Singletary for fantasy managers is gonna have to produce. Like they have no other option.
Yeah. My bold call is I think Cowboys running back Deuce Vaughn will have 30 or more receptions. I don't know how bold that is to some, but that'd be a good season for him.
I mean, that's definitely a step up from last year, right? And so, look, Deuce Vaughn looked great in the preseason. He didn't get a lot of work last year. For whatever reason, I don't know. But yeah, I like that. That's pretty cool.
Okay, here we are.
The small shifty backs that you have to worry about in the receiving game. So I like that call.
Yeah, absolutely. Here we are with Plug Talk. And Jorge, I'd like for you to share any and all content you're creating where we can find it.
Sure. So you can find me on X/Twitter at Jorge B. Edwards. But I would much rather you follow my brand's account, Fantasy and Frames, at Fantasy and Frames. Head over to our YouTube channels, hit the subscribe button and notification bell. Head over to all our social media channels. TikTok, we've been getting into pretty hardcore. YouTube, hardcore. Facebook, we're getting there. Instagram, we're getting there. But also head over to fantasyandframes.com. Check out our rankings for Dynasty, Redraft, IDP, Dynasty, IDP, Redraft, rookie rankings, you name it, as well as all of our articles in season, as well as our articles in the off season. Just a lot of great work there. We got Gary Davenport, who's he writes for every single big name site I can think of, and he is known as the IDP godfather in fantasy football circles. He's coming on board and writing for us this fall, so we're looking forward to that. Have a lot of great writers, a lot of great content creators. We talk about everything fantasy football. So really appreciate your support at Fantasy and Frames.
Guys, make sure to go sub to those channels. Follow Jorge and Fantasy and Frames on Twitter. I am Paul Ryan. You can find me on Twitter, aka X, at Paul_Ryan15. Jorge, thank you so much for your time tonight, man.
Thank you so much for having me. It has been a blast. I love talking the NFC East. And if you ever need somebody to talk about this again, I know we have an instant rivalry already. I'll be happy to pleasantly talk trash with you in season when it's Cowboys Commanders week.
Absolutely, man. Looking forward to it. Guys, again, I'm Paul Ryan, and I'll see you guys next week.